Hi, Filmatics. Thanks for tuning in. We have a very special guest, and I am just so happy to have him on the show today. We have Jude Gerard Press. He's also Italian, like me, and Jude is an award winning writer, director, showrunner, and producer. And he's known for some of his world famous interviews interviewing kings, queens, even Prince Charles and Charles Manson, and voodoo chiefs and serial killers and celebrities. We'll learn more about that because I want to learn about his amazing grand jury prize for best screenplay at Film Invasion Los Angeles International Film Festival and some of his stuff he's working on. So let's welcome Jude Gerard Press to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Jude, you have to first tell everyone, okay, I asked you about your last name. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. My last name is Prest. My legal last name is Prest, but it was shortened from Prestigiacomo. My grandparents were Sicilian, came over from Palermo, Sicily. And when my grandfather came over, he was on the last boat before Ellis Island opened. The original port was New Orleans for the West Coast and San Francisco for the East Coast. For the West Coast was San Francisco and New Orleans was the original port for East Coast. And he was on the last boat before Ellis Island opened. And when they came over, they would typically come in and, just have their names shortened or whatever, and ours were shortened to Prest, but it is originally Prestigiacomo. And apparently there's a little village somewhere near Palermo that is called Prestigiacomo. I've yet to find it, but that's what I've been told.
Oh, amazing. So yeah, we're so happy to have you. And can you let our audience know, because they're so amazing, we have audience all around the world, where you are recording live on our lovely Wi-Fi today?
Yeah, I live in the Los Angeles area. I've been here for about 30 years. I'm originally from Louisiana, Shreveport, Louisiana, northern Louisiana. But I I went to school in Boston and Ohio, and then for theater, film, and TV, and then was in New York doing theater for a few years, and then out here for, 25, 30 years now.
Wow. Well, let's find out how you had your incredible journey from Louisiana to being a showrunner, executive producer, director, and writer for some of your most. The series that people probably know you for is Deadliest Warrior for Spike TV and Ocean Mysteries with Jeff Corwin, and also you've done so many things on Animal Planet. But I want to ask you, growing up, what was one of your favorite childhood films that you remember?
Well, look, as a kid, I loved all of the, Disney live actions, Herbie the Love Bug, Escape to Witch Mountain, all the old Kurt Russells. And who doesn't love Kurt Russell, right? All the old Dexter Riley Kurt Russells, Now You See Me, Now You Don't, Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, Barefoot Executive. I really love those. But I got to tell you, the films that really shaped me were films that I probably shouldn't have been seeing at that age, which was my dad was a very quiet Sicilian guy, didn't talk much, died very young. So when I was, I think, 19 or 20. But one thing we my mom and dad owned these mom and pop Italian grocery stores and cafes and stuff like that. And they worked in the stores 18, 19 hours a day sometime. But my dad would take me to movies that, like I said, I probably had no business being in at that age, but he would take me, and that's how we bonded. So from a very early age, the movies I was seeing and really shaped a lot of my love of cinema and filmmaking, and ultimately made me want to be an actor and all that was, The Godfather, The Exorcist, The Omen, Mean Streets, James Bond, The Graduate, stuff like that. And The Godfather, which you can see, you can't see because we're not on video, but behind me I have a Godfather poster, is my sort of all-time favorite movie, because I think that is a movie that my father and I saw, tons of times together, and it has always just stuck with me as not only its merits as a film, but just that memory of my dad and I really going to see that, several times, then Godfather 2 after that, of just that sort of bonding. And then having that Sicilian heritage in my background and all that stuff too, certainly didn't hurt. But those were the films that really shaped me what I would ultimately become as a filmmaker and my interest and that, those are the ones that really stick with me. Although I still love the old Dexter Rileys. I just watched Wore Tennis Shoes about a week ago.
Oh, wow. And when you said Herbie the Love Bug, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. And what about It's a Mad, Mad World?
Oh, what great movie. Yeah, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Great, amazing, that was a film where everybody in the world was in that film for that time. And yeah, it's just an amazing film.
And when you were talking about how your dad took you there, it just brings back those cherished memories that films were a place where you did have special memories as a kid. Like when you said Escape to Witch Mountain, I remember that too.
Yeah,
I just remember being there with those happy times. You didn't have to worry about rent or COVID or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or what you had to be when you grew up. You could just enjoy a film with other people in the movie theater, just hoping no one's that taller than you in front of you.
Definitely.
So speaking of, I wanted to ask you, you are a producer, writer, director, actor, showrunner. So was there a Criterion film that perhaps inspired you even further to go into filmmaking?
Yeah, for me, once I got into high school, I always fantasized sort of. I was kind of a heavy kid, and I was always sort of the class clown. I was class clown, and I was funny, but I was pretty shy. And I was shy in groups. There would always be the one person that sort of was the center of attention. I was not that guy, but I was funny one-on-one or in writing or in sketches or things like that. But I was not the guy that was the big, bold, out there, look at me, I'm funny sort of guy. But I was, I had a lot of friends, but I was pretty shy. And I worked at movie theaters all through high school. And the movies that really stuck with me during that era, Jaws, Star Wars. I think I would see them over and over and over and over again because I worked at the theater. And, all those movies that kind of in that sort of period of the 70s, I really loved. And then what really got me sort of out of my shell and into performing and all that was the Blues Brothers. Night Live was hugely popular. Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi were doing the Blues Brothers. It was hugely popular. The movie came out, and I sort of decided to freak everybody out by breaking out of my shell and saying, hey, I want to do the talent show. Now, I had never done anything on a stage or in front of people. I said, I want to impersonate the Blues Brothers. And it was a pretty good mimic. And so pulled a band together from my, high school pals, and we did the whole thing, and it became so popular. We did 4 or 5 songs. We played our high school talent show, and then it became so popular that we were invited to like 5 or 6 other high school talent shows. And then ended up getting a little bit of a nightclub act where we would be sort of snuck into this bar in downtown Shreveport at night, play 3 or 4 songs, and then ushered out because we were too young to actually be in the bar. And that was it was that where I really went, oh man, it was just that feeling of being accepted and the applause and all that stuff of, coming from this very shy kid. That suddenly it's like, whoa, I'm like center stage and it's fun, and that really shaped like this is what I want to do. But those movies from the 70s, I'm a card carrying Comic-Con collector nerd. I have probably 2,000 original movie posters that I've collected since high school. Star Wars, every kind of action figure. And I've just been collecting forever, memorabilia, props, things like that. And it's those movies that really shape me. Jaws, Star Wars. Obviously, I'll always keep going back to The Godfather and those great movies, The Conversation, and the stuff that those directors and producers out of the 70s were doing. I love classic movies. And, if you ask me my list of favorite movies, you'll find a lot of movies from the 30s and 40s on there and 50s. But the era that really sticks with me is that period of the 70s when, this group of filmmakers were sort of allowed to do what they wanted to do. And you were getting an amazing genre for every an amazing film that has stood the test of time for every genre. You know, Jaws, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Conversation, Godfather, Godfather 2, Back to the Future, American Graffiti, Planet of the Apes, which was 69, but the ones that followed, Dog Day Afternoon, The Sting, Butch Cassidy. I mean, you could go on and on and on. Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, which happens to be my favorite comedy. The Exorcist, The Deer Hunter, Raiders. Every genre had its classic that still holds up to this day. And I don't know that you can necessarily say that about a lot of eras, other than when you go back to maybe the 39, 40, or 50s, but so this, and obviously the 60s. I mean, every era has their great films, but for me, the 70s was just that era right before everything got corporate and filmmakers were able to really just do their vision, and some great stuff came out of it. And because that's where I was right in the heyday of working in the theaters, and having access to all of that repeatedly, I would see it was not unheard of for me to see a movie, 20, 30 times.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So you're a boy in Shreveport, Louisiana, watching these amazing films, working in the theater. So in the theater, you were able to watch these, right? So that was one of the benefits and bonuses. Yes. That's amazing. Yes. Yeah. And my dad is from Louisiana. My last name is Aber. So we have awesome. We're Italian, and we're, so I think our love of films is very clear, and your love of films is extraordinary. And you pick some good ones. And I love it because our audiences are like, oh, your guests, recommend and talk about such great films they never heard of. And I saw them and they're so great. So our audience will probably go check out some of the films that you mentioned. Yeah. Like American Graffiti, that's a good one too, right?
Such a great film.
Yeah.
And you look at just the number of people that came out of that film, Ron Howard and Harrison Ford and Richard Dreyfuss, and I mean the list of people that were in that film, that would go on to have amazing careers is phenomenal. And there was also a very, which I try to do today, there was also just a very collaborative effort. Coppola was was helping Lucas, and Lucas and Spielberg were partnering up on stuff, and there was just this very collaborative effort that I don't. It still happens, obviously, but I don't think as much as that period where it was just, everybody was kind of in the same boat and they were pulling for each other to do the best, their crazy visions,
Well, we'll just have to make it happen again. We'll just have to help each other, because connecting, I think a lot of people connected over COVID on Zooms and Wi-Fi, and a lot of people, were hungry for work, not hungry, but they want to work. I mean, it was such a lonely, depressing place. So a lot of people were like, let's just do something. Let's come together and do something, whether it's, podcast or a radio noir series, which, I got people to do this beautiful film noir drama series on thrilling stories called Identity Theft. So people came together, and I think people are wanting to come together and connecting. I'm just going to cheer everyone to let's pull together and help one another, because at the end of the day, it's helping one another. You can boost someone up that could be the next, Coppola or Spielberg, and then, then he can give you work, or she can give you work.
Absolutely. And there's a few things out there now that are kind of helping to do that. There's a app that I kind of was resistant to at first, but then a buddy of mine, a collaborator, a writing partner of mine, got me into a Clubhouse, which they have a lot of filmmaker forums, and through that, I've connected with a couple of filmmakers and things like that I wouldn't have normally, who've done some nice stuff. So it's a way to get on and just have a conversation about topics that you love, and then there's a way after, if there's interest, that you can connect with each other and stuff like that. So that's been a really cool thing to jump on. And you really, I try not to go on as that often, because you go down a rabbit hole where you're on it for hours, but it's a really cool, that's been a really cool thing. And then just, Facebook and all the stuff, LinkedIn and everything has been a great equalizer for kind of reaching out to people that, you respect or might want to work with or might want to collaborate with. So that's been really good too.
Yeah, wonderful. So I want to ask, is there, you touched on some amazing directors. So I'm going to ask you, since you also direct and showrun and you write, is there a favorite scene in a movie, and you can share that scene and then the directing shot with us?
Yes, and look, there are many. You can go, It's a Wonderful Life. It Happened One Night is another one of my favorite comedies. Citizen Kane, Casablanca. I mean, again, you could go on and on. Wizard of Oz, and all of that. You could go on. I think for me, if you ask for a scene, and I probably always end up going back to The Godfather. If you ask, what's your favorite movie? Even though there are many that I love, I always say The Godfather. If you ask me my favorite scene, it's also from The Godfather, but I think it's one of the most brilliantly edited scenes of all time. And that is in the christening scene, Michael Corleone has been asked to be godfather to his sister's baby. And they're in this cathedral with the bishop doing the baptism. And he's doing this whole thing of, do you reject Satan? I do. Do you, reject evil? I do. And intercut with that, do you reject Satan, is all of the murders that he's ordered to kill all of the heads of the 5 families. And the way it's edited together, and the music and the performances and just the package of it, I think is one of the most brilliantly edited scenes in cinema. And it just this dichotomy of, cutting back between this hypocrisy of the good and evil that, while he is renouncing Satan, he's having all these murders committed. It is just a very powerful scene that sticks out to me as one of the most brilliantly edited of all time.
Yeah, I mean that reminds me, yeah, and it reminds me that there's a little bit of good and bad in all of us, but
Right.
hopefully we choose to have more good come out of us, because this world is full of good, bad, and hopefully we can all make it and get over these obstacles, because people are having a hard time right now. But the good thing is, like, the streaming, it's opened more doors for, I think, more people, because we need more content, and to have like brilliant directors and filmmakers, like you said, like The Godfather, the Coppolas, the Spielbergs, and there's so many wonderful ones. So I'm going to ask you, since you write and you act, is there a favorite scene that you would have loved to written, or a line from a movie that you love?
God, I mean, who wouldn't want to be, Hooper in Jaws, or Han Solo, or Indiana Jones? I mean, it's funny because I used to go, before I guess I matured or whatever, I would go to movies, and there was almost a sadness because a film would come up, Close Encounters, or The Conversation, or Dog Day Afternoon, or whatever it was. And it would almost make me sad because I knew I wasn't a part of that. And it was a thing that just hit me. And then you just, when you grow a little older and you start to realize, you just appreciate the performance, and you appreciate the work that goes into it. And I don't know, I mean, you could pick just about anything from Raiders of the Lost Ark, or The Godfather, or Jaws, or any of the Star Wars, and I would go, man, I would love to have just, been sitting at the table in the cantina for that, if I had the chance. I mean, there are so many, but I think those iconic sort of characters sit with me, that, man, it's like, you can't think of anybody else doing those roles that have done them, but you go, man, would I have loved a shot, if the timing were right and I were of the right age, or whatever. I don't know. I think you can look at so many things and go, that's a role I would have loved, or that's just a film I would have loved to have been associated with.
Yeah, every girl, I think, or guy these days, I'm in a generation where a different generation, but Breakfast at Tiffany's, we're all like pitching ourselves as Holly Golightly, but even like, since girls we're just starting to have action movies, but and it's so competitive for anyone. There's just so many people to choose from that, like, only that one person gets the lead, so
right.
But like Indiana Jones, like you said, or Han Solo, like, oh my God, if you were a guy, you would have so much fun doing those. Or James Bond, right?
Yeah, James Bond. Oh, I mean, who doesn't? Yeah, who am I kidding? As an adult, it's like, man, to be James Bond, and here's the other thing that I love about it. You look at something like, Apollo 13, or any of that, where it's like, or a great Western, you get to literally be in that, when they filmed Apollo 13, they got to go up in space and do weightlessness, do the vomit comet thing and be weightless and you get to sort of experience that I'm never going to get to go into space. I mean, so to be able to do the stuff that you get to do when you're doing film or TV or even great theater, that experience of really being able to, step into those shoes and wear those, costumes and be that person or be that from an actor point of view and a director point of view as well. It's just, you get to really, as I said, done all non-scripted stuff, the documentary stuff. You get to sort of step behind the velvet line and really live in that person's shoes in that era and that time and that world and have those experiences that you would never have in your normal life, So I think that's one thing that was always so appealing to me about it.
Yeah. And well, you certainly made a beautiful career for yourself. And I want to just, because I want to ask you, so we'll probably do part 2 pretty soon, but we will start. You kind of mentioned on your journey how you started. Did you go to theater? You went to theater school, right? On Louisiana?
Yes. So I had actually started acting in Louisiana. I was doing local plays and I'd actually done a couple of movies, Southern Comfort with Powers Booth and Keith Carradine, Walter Hill film had shot in Louisiana, and I had a little part in that. And then my mom, again, my family knew nothing about the entertainment business, but my parents were extremely supportive. I was really blessed to have them be very supportive of me going, I want to be an actor, And my mom had found a great summer theater institute in Boston University Summer Theater Institute, where you could go for 6 or 8 weeks and do this intensive acting study. And, they put me on a train and I went there, and then I got a scholarship to BU and studied film and television. I studied theater, but then I would also do film and television classes there. And then I was on scholarship, and the scholarships about my second year ended up getting kind of wiped out a little bit. There was a lot of scholarships were cut back, so we just couldn't afford it at the time. So a buddy of mine was going to a school called Wright State in Dayton, Ohio, which at the time had one of the top 10 theater schools in the country, still is a highly reputable. Matter of fact, Tom Hanks is a big supporter of the school and has lent his name to one of the buildings. And he and so I ended up getting a scholarship to go there and finish there. And ultimately, it was a great decision because I met. The school held auditions for theater jobs after graduation, and I ended up getting a job in New York with a theater company. Ended up doing a lot of theater in New York, touring and plays, and I was doing all kinds of really cool shows, everything from children's theater to Horatio and Hamlet to Leonid of Mice and Men to whatever, and so started there, and then I was there for about 2.5 years and was offered another contract, but I decided I wanted to do Hollywood, and I knew it would be a ramp up of time. So I came out, moved out to Hollywood around 88. I was doing a show I moved out initially around 86, 87.
Did you come by yourself? Did you drive? Did you drive across country?
I did. I drove back home to Louisiana to kind of load up a Toyota Tercel hatchback at the time, and then moved out to LA. And a buddy of mine came with me, and we kind of made the road trip across, and lived in a little tiny apartment in North Hollywood with 2 other guys to start with for about the first year or so. But I was out here for just maybe about 6 months, and then one of the shows that I'd done in New York, which was a huge success, called The Crate, very funny show by Shel Silverstein, got picked up again to do kind of a by popular demand sort of thing. And so I went back out to New York for a little while to do that again and tour, and then really came back about 88 late 88 or so, here for kind of good 88, 89. And I've been here ever since. Now I've gone all over the way. I've overseen shows now in 6 continents and around 90 countries. So I have traveled extensively with projects, but my base has been here since, 9, I guess.
Wow. So Shreveport Jude Press comes from you go to New York and do this hit by everyone probably I don't know if they're familiar with Shel Silverstein. He's the one that did those kids books, right?
Where the Sidewalk Ends, and we started it at a company called the Merry-Go-Round Playhouse in upstate New York, and then toured in the city and then all around the East Coast for 6 months or so. It was a great. We were sold out every night. It was if I played 17 different characters in it. I have a one thing that happened also while I was at Wright State is I formed with a great group of friends who were still all friends to this day. Sketch comedy and improv group. So we were doing a lot of sketch comedy and improv as well and touring. And we had played in New York. We had played a lot of the comedy clubs in New York and toured around. And that was a great, that was a great learning ground for doing tons of characters and multiple characters. And when I'd auditioned for The Crate, it was basically 6 actors that played tons of roles, and I think I have 17 different characters in that. From a New York genie to Santa to little kids to whatever. So that show was a blast. Still one of my most fun theater experiences ever, and I've done many and had great theater experiences. But that was just a fun show to do. Costume show from hell. I'd have to go from a full Santa outfit to a genie outfit in 20 seconds, but so much fun. But yeah, Shel did Where the Sidewalk Ends and The Missing Piece and The Giving Tree, the great, fun children's, which, he was an interesting guy. But I've actually been trying to bring that show out to the West Coast for decades, but he had a clause in his contracts originally, I don't know if it still is, that he would not allow his plays to be performed on the West Coast. I guess he had a real thing about California or whatever, so he wouldn't do that. But that may have changed now. I don't know. But it was funny because the head of the company and I talked about trying to bring it out here for years.
Oh, well, maybe with our audience, they can cheer you on. Like, if our audience likes it, please give 5-star reviews and say, we want The Crate to come to the West Coast. Because sometimes, the audiences can really make a difference when they want something. And I have to ask you, so you played a genie and a Santa and little kids. Can you share any of those lines with us a little bit? Or do you remember?
There's a really funny, poignant. The show is funny because it's part musical, part sketch. It's all like vignette sketches, and some are very just out there, and some are just poignant, and but there's this one that is called Santa Comes to Death Row, and it's Santa is getting a little senile and confuses names on his list. An 8-year-old boy that wants a tricycle with a death row inmate that wants a full pardon. And so he ends up bringing this tricycle to this inmate in death row, who at the end of the sketch was riding off to his execution on this little tricycle. And Santa does this big soliloquy speech at the end of, and it literally is this monologue that goes on for a while, is life certain? What did not? And this big philosophical speech, and at the end, he just goes, "I don't know," and that's the end of the sketch. It's like so there really is no answer to, meaning of life in a way. It's just sort of things happen the way they happen, and this death row prisoner ends up riding off to his execution on this tricycle because Santa was a little senile and confused, the things. And I played a Jack in the Box who pops up.
We're gonna end part one.
Yeah.
so that we can come back and find all the spectacular shows that Gerard PREST is show running, producing, his award-winning script. So come back to join us for part 2 with Jude PREST. Thank you, everyone.